By the way, we're live. Everything's going okay. Okay, so it looks
All right.
the stream looks good when I see it. All right, so uh, I should I should pull up our text thread and see like the.
Well, introduce yourself first. Like,
All
let's.
right,
Who are we?
so I'm some guy. No, I'm Jake, and this is and I'm here with
Watson.
yes, the two of us used to work
Watson.
together.
Watson.
What's that?
AKA Watson the Dev.
Yes.
AKA Watson the Dev. That's my unused Twitter handle that I am going to start posting to
There's
eventually
has
someday.
no tweet history.
Yeah, yeah. Watson the Dev. It's a real thing. It really is.
I
That
mean,
was
are
it.
you allowed to talk about anything but politics on Twitter anymore?
Twitter or sorry, politics or technology. I feel like
Yeah.
that's all that. I mean, which technology
Or
at
if
this
you can
point
make
is
the two work
practically.
together, then you're just the Twitter
Yeah,
star.
it's almost technology at this in this day and age is almost a political stance, anyways.
Yeah.
Really, I feel like.
All right. Well, I don't want to go. I don't want to take this conversation down that path.
Oh, let's go there.
I got more than enough politics in my life. um, and so Watson and I used to work together.
Yeah,
And we started out as basically as coworkers, and coworkers who argued a whole lot, and then
as any good coworkers should
yeah, definitely. Hey, it's not an interesting
respectfully
work.
argue.
Yeah, if you agree a lot, that's not a fun place to work. And so Watson, and then there was upheaval, and it ended up that Watson ended up being my manager, and it was briefly terrifying because I was like, the coworker that I argue with the most is now my manager. But
I
it ended up
chose
working out
through
great.
the graciousness of my heart not to immediately fire you, as if that was something I could do.
Yeah, you
As
have
if that
that
was something
power,
I
right?
could do. I did not have that power. I definitely didn't. Brian
So
would have been like, "Bro, no, you are drunk with power. You cannot do that."
yeah, no,
Yeah,
I think it would have been a conflict of interest, but no, it worked out well. We had a great working
it
relationship
was
from that
great.
point on,
Yeah,
and but from when we started working together to my very last breath walking out the office, you and I differed
yes.
immensely on the sub. Oh man, I didn't name this stream correctly. Can you change the name of the stream midstream?
You can definitely change the name of the stream
Okay,
midstream. I
because
don't know
I was gonna call it TDD versus the haters. So here we go. TDD
what's it called
versus
now.
the haters. It's just test. Okay, I've updated it, and I don't know if we'll see if it gets passed along
Is
to
anybody in chat? I should open this up in a Chrome
in
window.
Twitch. Yeah, I love.
I don't.
I turn on my stream settings, and it becomes like an infinite recursion, like
What's your stream channel name?
just my name, Jake Hawken.
Really? God,
Yeah,
people that
man.
can get their actual names for their user handles online on the
Well,
internet.
you have a hard time getting your name because you're the name of a famous character. You are
Yeah,
Sherlock Holmes' assistant, so of course your name's got to be available.
yeah.
But
You mean
I have a last name that is
you mean
spelled
the famous
strangely.
character John Watson, the iOS developer? That's
Yeah. Oh
from the
yes.
novels.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
famous, the very same.
He's the he's a literary version of you. I don't know how that works. Yeah. No, I don't think there's anyone in chat. But
I'm in chat
I
now.
oh there is.
Well, there's two people. I'm one of them.
Oh okay. Oh gotcha. I'm sorry. I'm a little slow today.
There's three people. It says three now.
Oh.
There's somebody
And that's
here.
not just number fuzzing, because Reddit will do that. So when you dislike
I
something or like
don't.
something, you can't see the actual impact you had.
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm
It's
gonna pull up
real.
Twitch on my. Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, it says 3 viewers. Yes, I see that as well.
Yeah.
And let me see if I can get it going
Now
on
it's
my.
four because you're gaming your own. You
Oh
voted for
yeah.
yourself.
Oh, that's what the other view was. It was my phone. No, but no, I'm not looking at it from anywhere else. So no, that would have just been one. I don't know. Trying to see. I don't see any other. Oh, I know. Someone, Umaro XP. Don't know who that is, but they're watching on. They're watching on YouTube. Anyway,
All right.
well,
All right.
Anyway,
Well, let's give them something to look at.
let's give them something to talk
Someone to see.
about. Okay, so
So you were saying the one thing that we disagreed upon the entire time they worked together, and still to this day,
yes, is the
is
subject of unit testing. Now, the other day you sent me a message. In fact, I don't know if you can remember it off the top of your head what the message was, but it was something. It involved percentages. Can you share that with me?
oh yeah. It was. I believe that 90% of places that do unit testing of any kind,
I'm gonna pull up the text.
it provides. Yeah, I don't know exactly what I said, but like the majority of places that do unit testing or make unit testing a priority for themselves, it provides no value at all, and in fact, in majority of cases, it actively frustrates and makes things worse.
Okay.
It takes up developer time, it complicates the code base, it confuses things, and it's just bad. And
Okay, I'm finding the actual percentage thing that you said because it was like a Elon Musk and Jack Ma thing where Jack Ma's saying all these these percentages and Elon Musk goes, but 80% of statistics are made up on the spot.
Yeah, 83.976% of statistics. You got to throw in the decimals.
Okay, so I'm trying to. Oh man, but yeah, you sent it to me because you're frustrated with some code that you were editing, and you said, I think the way I remember it is you said 80% unit testing is 80% manager feel good BS,
right?
And 20% or something like that. Actual,
a very small percentage actually exercising your code or like providing what I understand unit tests to do. My understanding of the real benefit of unit testing is that it provides code that what's the word, like it codifies your requirements.
Yep.
So that if a piece of code is ever modified in the future, refactored, it can be refactored in such a way that the original requirements are discernibly not violated because you have unit tests that are enforcing that those requirements are still being met.
Yes.
And I just don't think that that's the case. That's this pipe dream wishful thinking theory, but is not anywhere near what the code that I'm dealing with now is the unit tests are in and of themselves code. They ostensibly test stuff, but they are really just additional code, and it is a lot of additional code. Sure. And the goal of that code is for that code itself to work. It's not so much about actually testing requirements or features. It's about, can I game the system so that the code coverage numbers go up, which of course here's a quick aside. Part of the reason why I think that unit testing is so pervasive as a management driven requirement is that it is one of the easiest things, much like analytics, to turn into a number that looks good on a reporting spreadsheet. It's like, we increased unit tests by 10%. There's not a lot of things in coding that you can say, I did this by 10%, 15%, 20%. Certainly not a lot of things in coding that management types care about. Yeah. But unit testing is one that they do because, I bet you'd be hard pressed if you asked, what's that?
I'm seeing some comments. I'm seeing comments via text. All right, Capino, you need to actually get in the Twitch comments. Calling you out, Capino.
Oh, that's somebody else.
Who's
Tron 50,000?
He texted me.
Is Tron 50,000 who I think it is?
Oh yeah, no, that's our old coworker Mark.
Oh no.
Yeah.
He already knows. He already knows.
The three of us have had this discussion in person a million times.
Ad infinitum.
Except the two, you and I arguing, and with Mark being immensely polite.
Yeah. Mark was just like the anxious auntie in the corner, like, come on, guys, can we just please? We're just trying to have a nice meal.
To each
We're just
other?
having
If
we're
you
just
can't
trying to
say
have a
anything
nice dinner
nice,
together.
you know. Okay,
Yeah.
so I
Just
think,
kidding, Mark. We love you.
yeah. I wasn't saying anything bad. So I think we should probably talk about terminology and like what we mean when we say different things, because I think, when you say something and I say something, I think we might be talking past each other and meaning different things. So I think it'd be a good idea up front to be able to be a little clear about what we mean. And
All right.
I want to respond to the points you've made so far. In fact, I should probably write some of them down. Yeah, I'm a programmer sitting here writing on 3x5 cards with a pen. But I just
Do you
wanted
have Notepad? Do you have like a?
Yeah, yeah, I should probably do that, but then everyone would have to hear a bunch of clickety clackety clack on the video.
That's That's what gamers do when they stream, isn't it?
Clickety clack. No, that's Dave Chappelle, right? Like he's playing the World Series of dice. And he's like clickety clack. Anyway, okay, so when we talk about unit testing, I think it would be good for me to know what you mean when you hear that term, like what that brings to mind, what your mental model of what unit testing is. So I can give you my version, and we can probably come to something that will some sort of shared understanding, and then we'll work off of that in our debate.
Yeah, my understanding of a unit test in its purest form is a function that calls another function and verifies that the result of that function is what was expected given the input to that function.
Okay. All right. I think that's fair.
At its most basic. Now, unit testing has evolved far past that, but at its most basic, it's code that calls other code and then verifies that the results were what was expected.
Yes.
Based on a given input.
Yeah. Okay. So, I think some of the negative connotation that comes with unit testing is when the test itself knows way too much about how the function that it's calling works, and that's a big thing. It's like, it makes assumptions based on the fact that the developer writing the code knows how the function works.
Yeah.
When in reality, it should be about testing behaviors, right? So any interface in code, whether it's a protocol or whether it's just like the header, or depending on what kind of language you're working in, whatever your interface for a class is, or a type, in essence that interface is a contract. It is saying, hey, this is our agreement between you calling me and me doing stuff. Our agreement is these function signatures, and the names of them are in good code are explanations of what they do. And at the end of the day, it should be what unit tests are attempting to do is to verify that it does what it says on the tin, that it behaves the way you expect. And I think unit tests, when they're done correctly, are black box tests. They just go, I don't know how you're doing this. I don't know how you're implementing this, but I want to know that you return or you accomplish everything that I would expect, given the name of your method that you do, or given the documentation, or given whatever. Given the business requirements.
A little too specific, but yeah, given the business requirements for what this.
Okay, yeah, that's a good. Yeah, I think that's a good way. So given the business requirements.
And if I may, I want to kind of just throw something out there, which is, so this is kind of an interesting thing, because unit testing in our industry is known to be bad. And by our industry, I mean iOS development.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
I mean, like the state of unit testing in iOS development has always been pretty bad. And I bring that up as a response to the point that you just made about like verifying, behavior, and like, does this method do what it's supposed to do? XCUI, before this, I did a little bit of like just refreshing myself with XCUI tests and also Quick and Nimble. And XCUI test is, it's cumbersome. It's very cumbersome. Like,
Yes.
and the syntax of it doesn't really lend itself very well to like verifying behavior, as you say, because it's like it's the method signatures like xc assert, true, function call, and then value, and like all this stuff. And when you're reading it, you're like, it looks like code. It doesn't look like this page should show this at this time, or this thing should do this at that time.
That's
right?
fairly easily solvable by having the name of your test reflect what it's testing. Because you do all those inside, because like you can implement as many functions in a test class in XCUI test as you want, as long as they start with the word test, they will be treated as one of the tests. So you can have multiple, and you can name them. You can get granular in tests just like you can in any other kind of code, like helper functions and all that kind of stuff. But you're right. I think it's rough in the world. Like I've worked I think here professionally. I've worked on like 7 different teams professionally as an iOS developer, and I'd say only in one of them did they have a really good unit testing. 1, maybe 2 of those.
Was that ours?
No. No, we made a lot of progress while we were there, but like the history, admittedly by people who'd been there for a long time, like TDD had come and gone in its importance on the team, and there weren't a lot of people on the historically on the team who had a background in doing unit testing and stuff like that. So and the code base reflected that. But we, while we were there, in the time I was there, I'd say the 3 of us, but you were not a fan of unit testing, so you did not contribute heavily to this. But Mark and I did a lot to try to change our architecture to make it so that unit testing was easier to do.
And my thing on the like, I draw the line at the the architecture is where my holy war ends. If the architecture
can you flesh that out a little bit?
Yeah. So I mean, if the architecture exists and is good, it is almost not completely. There is space for unit testing, but there is like the code should be self-evident to an extent, right? Like if the architecture is built well.
You need to explain what you mean by that, because I'm not completing your thought in my head, so I don't know what you mean.
Like if your code is segmented via like industry agreed upon design patterns and is legible, has short methods, small class files, good naming conventions, syntactical conventions, all those things, then the code should be able to be looked at by a developer and understood what is being done, so that if it were to be modified or refactored, then the likelihood of it cascading out of control is small, which again, I believe is kind of the point of the unit test. And then I will say, I have historically through my career always had a very high quality QA department available to me, and they do the last line of defense checking. And I don't think that unit tests will ever replace manual QA, nor should they. So
and proponents of TDD do not think it will or should. I think they're different. They're different areas of concern, because like unit tests are largely technical tests. They are making sure that your implementation does what the interface says it should. And whereas the thing is, but those interfaces are at so many different granular layers in between, whatever your backend is and your UI. And so, once you get up to the level of UI and what the user actually experiences, that's largely the domain of manual testers. And and catching regressions and doing ad hoc testing is really the 2 big things that manual developers do.
I think there's a message in chat here that I think actually kind of touches on that subject.
In which platform?
PhD Mash Ultra
Oh, that's Capino.
says it seems like we should segment types of things one can test: pure functional business logic, state machines, composite integration, and user interaction. And yeah, user interaction is a line where like I think that breaks down a little bit. Like I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of unit tests around user interaction, nor should you. And the closer that you get to pure machine level stuff like databases or network calls, that sort of stuff, the more we should ratchet up those unit tests. Yeah, business logic.
Yeah. And so there's a place for this, right? And so like there is different levels of abstraction, and at the different levels there's different use cases for the different kinds of testing, whether it's manual validation or it's UI tests or it's unit tests, or integration tests. Or whatever.
I would still argue that given if the code is clean enough, which the code should be clean in order to affect unit test. Like if the unit tests are going to be clean, the code has to be clean too. If the code's dirty, the unit tests are going to be dirty.
Yes.
So you write clean code, and then you've got clean code, and then throw the unit tests out, because now the unit tests are just extra code that you got to double down on. And the problem is that usually both of those things are done badly, and what you've actually got is a clump of mud surrounding a ball of wax, surrounding a ball of razor wire, and it's just this unmaintainable mess. And it like what I've seen with unit tests historically is they are just a cluster, and it's bad code on top of bad code. And unfortunately what we keep talking about is this like pure theoretical concepts of unit testing and code, which is like, this is what it is meant to do. But that meant to do-ness never survives intact with, the real world.
Yeah.
And it quickly devolves and spirals out of control because it's written by, unit tests are written by people that don't know how to write unit tests correctly, around code written by people that don't know how to write clean code.
Okay, so this takes me back to something that happened in our text thread when we were talking about this. You'd made all these criticisms of unit tests, and I said everything that you just said, you could replace the word code, with tests with like production code, and it would be equally true. Just as you have to maintain, you don't go, oh, I have to maintain this code. It's bad code. So it's a bad argument for tests too. If you just because you have to maintain your tests, it doesn't mean that they're not worthwhile. That isn't a valid argument for saying that they're not worthwhile.
Unit tests don't provide business value in 99% of cases. They provide a little bit of business value in that they might catch.
Okay, so now you're arguing. You're talking past yourself, buddy, because you were saying before, oh, it's manager feel good BS. And it's like, okay, so which thing is it? Do we care about what the business side of things think, or do we not? Because there's an argument for it either way. Because at the end of the day, here's the thing. Middle management is always going to have to get convinced about things that are clearly of technical value to people doing the technical work. Anything that makes everyone go a million miles an hour sounds good to people in middle management, which is why awful kludgy tools like React Native and Xamarin and bullcrap like that all are still around and still exist as products, because some penny pinching middle manager somewhere is like, that's a good idea, it'll make us go fast. And it's like, yeah, it'll make you go fast now, but it'll make you go really slow later when you have to debug things.
Who says unit tests make you go faster? Really?
No. I'm saying the other way around. I'm saying it's the exact opposite of like a cross-platform tool. Cross-platform tool gets you going fast, gets you going up and going really fast, but it's going to slow you way down later when you have to debug something that has been, that is in minified code that's been spit out by a machine, and you can't really access the real underlying stuff that's going on. And it's the exact opposite with unit testing. It's a move slow to move fast kind of thing. When you make a change, because here's the thing, I think the problem that you're running into is you're doing this thing where you go, oh, I don't want to touch the tests. The tests are a pain, and I'm just going to ignore them and pretend they're not there. Oh, I pushed up my code and it ran and it ran all the tests that I've been ignoring the whole time I've been doing my development, and suddenly everything's slowed me way down. Whereas if you'd been running the unit tests every time you made a major change or a commit or something like that, you would have been.
What are they doing for me? What are they doing?
They're revealing to you where you've screwed something up. The interface between code and tests is by design. This isn't a bug. This is a feature. They are fragile on purpose so that when you screw stuff up, the tests break.
But screwing stuff up in most cases is just refactoring code.
That's another place where I think
it broke the test.
I think that's another place where we're talking past each other, because my definition of refactoring is a change that doesn't change the tests. If you've changed something such that the interface to your code now gives different, acts contrary to previous expectations, well, either the tests are wrong or the code are wrong, and one of them needs to be updated.
I'll tell you, the number of times that I've seen in place refactoring done like that is like minimal.
Well, then I would. Then I would argue that those aren't refactors. That's not a refactor. That is a change.
It's a rewrite. Yeah, it's a change.
Yeah.
That's how code gets.
That's not what a refactor is. A refactor is the interface stays the same and you've made a modification to the implementation. You've cleaned it up. You've made it more efficient. And changes like that shouldn't affect the unit tests.
The only time, sure, I agree. You're not wrong, but how often does that happen?
Hey, when I was working on an XP team, when we were doing TDD, so everyone was on board with, unit testing. That was a smooth, clean process. That was how we worked, and it was like
you refactored in place code on a regular basis.
No, on a regular basis, no. But if I'm touching a method and I'm like, oh man, this is 15 lines to do what we could do with 3 clear lines. I'll do that. Boom, doesn't break any tests. And you know what? In the times when I wrote something wrong and it did change the way it behaved, guess what? The test broke. Just like they should. The test failed. And so
in those instances, I agree. That's great.
Now, there's also a knock-on effect, another positive knock-on effect of doing TDD. And also, actually, let's step back for a second. TDD.
PhD Mash Ultra's got a question.
Oh yeah. If you're modeling a complex business domain, the cost of having every new person figure out what it's supposed to do is pretty high. Yes, and I was actually talking.
But I don't see how unit tests help with that.
But see, that's the thing. That's another knock-on effect of unit tests, is they serve as a form of technical documentation. Yeah.
Okay. So actually, I do see how that helps.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
especially if they're written in a what is the quick and nimble framework? What do they call it? Like a pattern matching or something
a cucumber pattern or no, gherkin pattern. Gherkin pattern.
Yeah, like a human readable thing, right? As opposed to XCUI test or XC test, which is just.
That's just a framework. Yeah, and the thing is, most of those frameworks are built on top of XCUI test.
Of course, but XC unit test itself is
it does not help you with a human readable syntax, but
which is what I'm looking at right now. The code that I'm looking at right now is a bunch of XC unit tests wrapped in a whole bunch of code.
And are they in just one giant God method? Does each test suite only have one giant test method?
It has a bunch of little test methods that call into 1 or 2 God methods.
Okay. Yeah, no, here's the thing. Just like code, tests can be written poorly. You know what I mean?
I understand that. Which is why I say, let's just write good code and fuck the tests.
This is like a conversation I have with my son where I'm like, don't do that. That's dangerous. He goes, oh, but I'm going to be careful. I'm like, yes. Because, or like, I'm not going to get hurt. I'm like, yes. Because people who get hurt we're planning on it. People get in car accidents, we're planning on it. I'm going to drive well. I'm not going to wear a seatbelt. I'm going to drive well. That's what you're saying, bud.
Look, if every instance of unit testing that I had seen in the wild, except for what we did together at our last job, was a complete cluster, was not like a complete shit show, then maybe I'd be more on board with this. But like unit testing in our world of iOS development is categorically bad and does not help, I think, in most cases.
I don't think blanket statements like that are ever accurate. Much less precise.
It's all bad. It's all
bad out here.
Bad.
Okay,
there's notes. I've never met a unit test I liked.
Okay, so TDD. The name means test-driven development, but I think but the thing is, in practice, it doesn't literally need to mean I write a test before I write any code. What it means, and people like Dr. Bob and stuff will say this. Is it Dr. Bob? Uncle Bob? Uncle Bob? Is that what it was?
Uncle Bob.
Yeah. But it's funny because I have an uncle named Bob who's also a doctor. And then there was also Dr. Bob from not Sesame Street.
Uncle Bob is Robert Martin.
Muppet Show.
Isn't that Robert Martin? Is that his name?
Yeah, Dr. Bob Martin. Uncle Bob Martin. Damn it! Sorry.
Uncle
anyway,
Robert Martin. He wrote. I think he wrote a lot of books. Clean Code, maybe
several.
No.
And he also has a very popular blog. But his definition, which I think is probably the most practical definition of
Sideshow Bob.
Slideshow Bob. Just always trying to get back at Bart.
Mash Ultra is like contributing a lot here.
Yes. No, dude, seriously, this is that's one of my coworkers that I did TDD with, and who did a massive
bring him
amount.
into the conversation.
Yeah, he's
making good points.
Yeah, dude. Hey, Capino, if you want, I can bring you in on Discord, and you can come in too. But then I feel like we'd be teaming up on Watson. That'd be mean.
I am the minority, and I think like. If you, as a software developer, go in and say that unit testing is bullshit and we shouldn't do it, I mean, that's a quick way to getting yourself kicked out of the building, because it's universally agreed that it's good.
What's interesting is you say that, but I with the exception of 1.5 teams that I worked on, it's not universally done. It's not universally it was only one team I've been on where it was a requirement for you to update the tests for your PR to get accepted.
Yeah.
And on that team, our unit tests were immensely helpful. Okay, Codeman. That's the thing. I think if that's who I think it is, it's another person from that team that I worked on. He says there's still just more education to be done around testing, especially on iOS. iOS is still relatively new. There are many enterprise Java code bases that have a lot of good tests, and that's a big thing. Is iOS is pretty new compared to other forms of development.
That's true, and also I want to point out iOS code by and large is user interface code. I believe that I know that there's exceptions to this. Obviously, there's a lot of other stuff that goes on in iOS code, but iOS is a language, or Swift, right? Swift is a language, right? The platform is pretty much the last line between the human and the machine, right?
Yeah,
and so a lot of the code there, it's client code, yes.
Yeah.
But whereas Java, C#, SQL, whatever, C#, Java, let's just stay there. That code is code that oftentimes lives on the server, a place where unit testing makes a lot more sense and is a lot more easy to do because it doesn't involve weird vagaries like human interaction.
Yeah.
And also it contains a lot more pure business logic, like what we were talking, like what PhD Mash Ultra was talking about before.
Yeah. So so the other thing that Codeman 9 there said was that iOS is probably the area where you have the biggest influx of new developers who, don't have any expectations. Well, I mean, I think he's even talking about people like me, whereas like I don't have a CS degree. I came into the the computer, like the software industry, with no baggage connected to me. I had no long history in development. I didn't work in enterprise, whatever. I hadn't done anything else, and I went straight into iOS. And
Yeah.
that said, I was thrown in my first job into the deep end, my first full-time gig, into the deep end of doing doing a full XP team. So like pair programming and test and TDD 100% of the time. And and the two guys, if both of them are who I think they are in the chat, who are two of the guys who had the biggest impact on leveling me up as a developer because we were doing TDD together and we were pair programming together. But to be clear, what Uncle Bob says about TDD is he says it's not so much about the literal tests driving your code, in the sense of it's not literally I write a test and then I can write my code and then I have to write a test before I can write some more code. It's the idea that you're working in tight iterating loops between writing and verification. And before we get back to talking about the technical aspect of maintaining a test code base, like basically writing all your tests.
Shadow code base.
Yeah, when we just phantom shadow code base. Yeah, you used that term yesterday in our text thread. But when we talk about the practice is theoretically about turning yourself into your own rubber duck.
Yeah.
By writing tests, you are constantly making yourself think about what you're writing instead of just going into autopilot. I'm in the code zone mode. And getting into the zone is good and stuff when you're experimenting, when you're hacking around before you start doing engineering. But you need to get out of that so you can go, okay, wait, what is my code doing? What does it need to be doing? And those are the questions you're constantly asking yourself when you write unit tests. And so TDD is really about writing a tiny bit of code and going, okay, do I need to write that? Is what I've written so far needed? Can I cut all this out? I just need to do this. Okay, it's doing that. Okay, but it needs to also do this and this. Okay, I'll add that. And it's working in tight iterating loops where you constantly question yourself. That is the real practical value add of doing a TDD up front. That's how you because you keep saying, I just want to write clean code, and then I won't need tests to verify it. But by the act of writing unit tests, you will have a greater likelihood of writing clean code. That's sort of the idea behind that.
Again, in theory, this, it's all nice. I agree in theory. I still think that unit testing should be probably kept at not a minimum, but at a low level. I don't think it needs to be all over the place.
Yeah.
I think that even when we were working together, we had a lot of tests that just didn't provide any value.
Sure, and a lot of those, I at the risk of sounding like a narcissist, I think those were legacy codes. It could be a code.
No,
legacy
even stuff
tests
that we wrote,
that were just from
tests that we wrote, I think were tests that, at the end of the day, didn't need to be there. They weren't helping us to ensure. It was around code that was never going to get refactored without a redesign, and was probably testing stuff that just was kind of self-evident.
You don't know what is and is not never going to get refactored. You don't know that. That's the thing. Is I think in order to oppose the concept of TDD, you have to be just brazenly just cocksure and chauvinistic about the future. I know everything. I know what's going to happen. I'm just of course nothing's going to go wrong. And I think those
it is
are always
unclear which tests
words.
have value or not until they do.
What's that? Oh,
it is unclear which tests have value or not until they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's and Cody said this thing here where he's like he went from our code base, which was 100% BDD TDD, and to a code base where it wasn't like that, and he had so much more confidence about changes he was making in the code base that was fully wrapped in a test harness. So I think it helps when talking about unit tests and test-driven development to think about where unit testing gets all of its terminology from and the concepts it's drawing from when we do it. So like unit testing is philosophically rooted in physical testing and like testing components and machines and stuff like that. And the idea with that is you would take parts of the machine and you, instead of putting them directly into the engine first or whatever machine it was that they were a part of, you would put them into a test harness, which is something that held the piece in place and then connected it up to things that were not the actual parts of the machine that they were connected to, but things that simulated the way those other parts of the machine would do. And then they would do stress tests and do various things like that. And so that way you could test the part before it could break your whole machine. And so that's where we get the term test harness, because this piece was being harnessed in and held in place and connected up to things that mocked out the other parts of the machine it was connected to. And I think that's a I'm just trying to make. Yes, see, and this PhD Mash Ultra here in the chat, he's fair. He's like, sometimes when you're looking at old tests, you're like, I don't even know what I'm looking at right now, and that's a fair criticism. Because the code you're writing is a lot more esoteric in tests, because it's testing code. It's code that tests code. Of course, that's going to get meta and confusing. Like,
I don't know. Like, I have not experienced what you are speaking of. I've never lived in that world. Maybe if I had, I would be more of a believer.
Maybe that's just the big disconnect. Like, you've never worked in a code base that was in a good test harness.
Yeah. But the problem is that I fundamentally believe that sort of thing is just, it is a unicorn, man. Like, it just doesn't, like, if you go into most places and you say, we got to write unit tests and our management needs us to get 30% code coverage, 40% code coverage, you know what you're going to get? A shit show.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to get most of the time.
I don't think it should be mandated like that. It should be.
But that's what it is. It's manager people coming into the room and saying, upper management has told me that we're not doing unit tests, and that's a dangerous thing for our code. It means that we're unsafe. We could be breaking changes without knowing.
And that's something I've never experienced. That's something I've never experienced. I've never experienced someone above me, like a manager, telling me I needed to be writing unit tests. It was always people to the left and right of me going, hey, we should do this if we want to make sure that we are able to maintain like context and we have a historical understanding of how these interfaces work.
I received a ticket at my latest position where it was like increased code coverage from 30 to 33%.
Wow. See, now I've never ever gotten a business requirement to increase test coverage.
That's how I've usually seen it.
Oh, wow.
Is management types.
Hey, I want to say hey, I want to like reach out and like rub your shoulder and be like, hey, I'm sorry they hurt you. There's someone out there for you, buddy.
Well, and then my job became go dig into this fucking cesspool of a shadow phantom code base that is full of I would say worse vagaries and sins than the actual code base has, because it's doing all this like crazy shit to get the test.
I'm 100% on your side. I'm in agreement with you on this one.
Okay, so and I think that this is the core thing that we always kept coming back to, which was we do not disagree fundamentally on the concept of unit testing and the purpose of it and the value that it brings.
Okay.
We disagree on the what I believe to be the true reality of the state of affairs of what unit testing actually is in the real world, and not in some perfect laboratory where, you write blog posts.
Yeah.
Or the few insanely unique and rare instances that you have been privileged to work thus far in your career.
Yeah.
Which I just strongly believe are few and far between. I don't know how you managed to get two.
That may be the case because like you've worked more places as software developer because you've worked as different kinds of developer than you haven't just been an iOS developer your whole time, and you've worked at a lot of different companies in a lot of different states and stuff like that. Like I've pretty much worked as an iOS developer in Washington, and and then now at my current role in a fully distributed team. But what Cody said in the chat was he said, we need to change it so that it needs to be something where it's the standard rather than the unicorn, so that there are industry standards for this. Because I think that's the biggest thing is in iOS there aren't industry standards for testing. Yeah. Whereas in enterprise Java and stuff like that, there are universal. There are. And
I still have a powerful passion. I mean, if we're doing this is a great first step. But I have a strong desire that you and I collaborate on something like that. Yeah, that's a huge effort, and you got your own thing going on, I got my thing going on. But I want to set that intention.
I need things outside of work. I need code projects outside of work, so to keep me fresh in my brains. So I'm down, man. I'm down to totally do a project with you that way.
I think that we need, not even a project. I want to have the discussion. I want to do some write-ups on this. I want to talk about you just said, the industry standards don't exist for our industry in a lot of respects. Yeah. Well, we built them. When we worked together, we had something that I would call world-leading industry standards for unit testing, for design patterns in iOS, for all of this different stuff, or in Swift. And we should share that.
So I think it's interesting. I'm sensing a thread in this conversation. Throughout this conversation, it's weird incentives and time pressures and bandwidth regarding middle management, like people directly above us and maybe right above them, that create a lot of these difficulties. Because how do you find the bandwidth at a regular software development job to be able to write up those documents and to create those standards and to lead those discussions and stuff like that? In most places, you don't have time for that. You need to get the next release out the door
and to that point, if that stuff is there, it's going to be there for the regular code, and therefore it will also be there for the unit test. And you're just going to have smuts on top of smuts.
So there's two things that have been said in the chat here that I think are worth mentioning. One is, what is the cost of a breaking change? That's a good question, because if there is a change made and it breaks things, it's
if the cost of a breaking change is our users their email sends the wrong dialogue or a dialogue in French when they get an error in their inbox versus the space shuttle exploded, you should do unit tests.
Sure, and that's the thing is, and that's another big difference is in the world of websites, web apps, you can someone's on pager duty and they can go push up a change that fixes it immediately. With the App Store, that's not an option. You have days between when you push it. You push up change and you get.
But the other thing about that though is that we had a tremendous amount of manual testing and verification steps between submitting a code freeze and getting it to the store. So there is also this other aspect of there is another form of testing that is, I believe, traditionally more effective than unit testing, that catches a lot of the stuff that I think that the way that unit tests are often written, it would have caught, manual testing and internal betas or dog fooding catches a lot of the stuff that unit testing would maybe catch, given the form that it's done in most places, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird one.
Yeah. No, and that's right. I think there's gray areas here, just like there isn't anything that's complicated. Anything that if you're getting paid to do it, it's probably complicated enough that there's going to be gray areas, which is why a human being needs to do it. So yeah, like you say you feel like you're talking against some sort of ingrained dogma when you talk against TDD or unit tests.
Just the idea that unit testing is an inherent good.
Yeah,
That's what I mean by that.
and I will be similarly heretical in saying I think this is a problem with the whole agile software revolution. I think agile has some serious problems to it, and and one of the things is if code quality and security and like safety are elements, then agile is actually probably working against you. You would not build a space shuttle using agile software development methodologies because agile accepts a certain amount of failure. Just like, oh yeah, we'll fix it later. But you couldn't build a space shuttle. You couldn't build like security software that way. You couldn't.
It's not even that we fix it later. I think this was actually mentioned in chat a little bit ago, but it's about the cost of a deploy, which is why there's been so much tooling in iOS late in the last like however long to shorten that deployment cycle. Like you can deploy things to the App Store very quickly now, and we have feature flagging systems that are very robust. So you can literally do instantaneous rollbacks, right? So the cost of releasing software that's messed up is very small. Like it's not that big of a deal.
But once again, you're putting a whole lot of faith in those systems when like.
Well, I hope they're unit tested.
Ah, you do, huh?
I don't give a shit. I don't care. As long as they passed QA verification, I'm fine.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Cody makes a good point here, where it's like, there is, like when you're talking to the business, as a developer, you're getting things said to you like, the customer doesn't care about tests. Well, obviously not. The customer doesn't care about code quality. Obviously not. They just care about whether or not their experience works. Yeah. But the thing is, like, so much of the things that you and I care about day to day in our workplace that are important to us, and they're important to the app continuing to be good over time, are things that, at the end of the day, no one's going to care about outside the office. So, once again, I don't think that's an argument against TDD. The fact that the customer doesn't care about it. Customer also doesn't care about tabs versus spaces, but your team has standards around them.
I agree with you. I agree completely. Yeah.
So it's a difficult thing. He goes like, how do you convince those folks, the business folks, to invest time and money to train employees to do that part of it well?
But see, I think that his point is kind of and going against what I'm trying to say, which is like, it's not that business folks come in and say our customers don't care about tests, we shouldn't do them. Business folks, what I usually hear is they come in and they say, we have 0% test coverage. Oh shit, our code base is dangerous. It's in this frail state. It could explode at any minute. We have to put unit tests on it. Quick, somebody go write some unit tests. We got to have something here. And then somebody that doesn't know what they're doing goes off under pressure. And by the way, don't forget, this developer still has to get actual features out the door.
Yeah.
That's what they're really, and that's what they're really being held to. This developer knows that all they got to do to get the unit test monkey off their back is game whatever system to pump that percentage up so that their manager will be like, oh, thank God, I can finally sleep easy. It's 30% covered. Ooh, dodge that bullet. Whatever that means, that doesn't mean anything.
No.
Now I, as a developer, can go back and continue working on stuff that'll actually get me paid and keep my job in line, which is feature development.
And the thing is, and if that's what TDD means, then I'm not on board with that either. And I just disagree that that's what TDD means or should mean.
I think that's what it means most places.
Man, it's so funny because I've never seen that personally. I've never seen that.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just super lucky that I've only worked shit shows.
Because it's a funny thing. So like one time, Facebook. Facebook reached out to me one time and they're like, "Hey, you want to come interview here?" And my answer was, "I don't think I'd be a good fit at your company." And then I expected them to be like, oh, this guy's a dick. I don't want to, okay, let's talk to the next guy. To their credit, they're like, oh, well, why is that? Could you tell me why? And I gave this kind of bulleted list of reasons why I didn't like that company and didn't want to work there, and things that I felt confusing and threatening about their company. And they're like, hey, well, tell you what, maybe you could have a chat, like a phone call with one of our senior engineers, and we could talk to you a little bit. And so I'm like, sure. If I'm going to be enough of a dick to say, hey, I hate your company, I think it's stupid, and I think it's bad for the human race, I'm going to let them defend themselves to me. Like part of the reason I don't like them is I feel like they silence people. So like maybe I won't silence them. So I got on the phone call with this guy, and we covered a lot of things. And I disagreed with him on a lot of things, but he made a couple really good points. And one phrase he said has stuck with me, where he said, overly simple metrics create perverse incentives. And he'd been talking about that in the context of like the Facebook video thing, and when they first started pumping that feature down everyone's throats, and it was like where people were stealing content and putting it up there and stuff like that. Anyway, but like it applies to a lot of things, and I think this is one of those, where you have a simple metric. Oh, there's code coverage, and it's like, well, that's as a metric as a thing that like the business tracks like code coverage. To me that is an overly simple metric that's going to create perverse incentives. And it's happened, like, before I got on that team that I worked with all these guys on, like, they hadn't quite ironed out their TDD system, and there had been a guy who ended up getting fired for this, but he'd written he basically, the way code coverage was computed was, it was like, how many lines of code were called from inside of the test framework. And so this guy just wrote a for loop that went in like 1,000,000 times and called it, and it said, 100% test coverage.
So
created a perverse incentive. And so not that's just not a healthy thing. Is though, you could take that about any like when the business starts dictating technical things, that you're going to get all sorts of weird incentives like that.
Sure.
And so, like, It's like, are we going to have the business start dictating what design patterns you use and stuff like that? Like, that would be equally toxic.
I mean, that is kind of what this feels like in some ways. Mm-hmm. Is it's like the business telling you like how to build your code.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. I'd agree, and also here's the thing: is TDD, like anything else in software, comes with a big asterisk of your mileage may vary and use with wisdom. Yeah. That's true of anything using code, like especially with design patterns. It's like, we generally use this design pattern now, but if you've written a like 10-line class, you don't need to then add 50 lines to it to make it fit your design pattern. Because that's just
we had this conversation a lot actually when we worked together. We said this class doesn't need to conform to these design patterns because it's too small.
Yeah.
Which I believe strongly. Like,
it would be over engineering at that point. I definitely.
I think Codeman. I want to just respond to Codeman real quick. BDD, TDD would not produce a code base with 0% coverage, so you wouldn't have managers freaking out on you about coverage.
Yeah.
Again, most places don't actually do BDD and TDD.
Correct.
So most places don't do that, and then 5 years into the code base, management comes along and says, we have this problem, manufactured problem, 0% code coverage, and we got to fix
code coverage. I like that.
Yeah.
Covered in toads.
And there's still a part of me that believes that even on the code base that you and I worked together, we didn't need to do so much unit testing, and there was some amount of unit tests that were providing no value. I can get behind the idea that you do it because you don't know which ones are going to provide value. Okay, maybe that's true. I still think that there was something about that. Like I would have liked to see us maybe take some time to pause and be like, which of the unit tests, like on what parts of the code base are the unit tests like double thumbs up, like we all really feel like these are helping us out and like I feel supported by them, versus ones that are like these are maybe like I don't know if they're really buying us much.
My argument would be anything that's public on that class. Any public method needs to be tested.
I think it's
now,
a domain.
How many tests you need to write about that? What's that?
I mean, for me, again, like I don't know a lot about TDD. I haven't done it. Mm-hmm. Or I had in my tenure as a software developer, I did not write a lot of tests. Like even when we worked together, I wasn't writing code. I wasn't writing tests. So I don't know how this works. I don't know what it feels like to be in that state. But my understanding, my belief, I guess I should say, because I'll just say I don't know if it's based on facts. It's a belief, is that it was more of a domain thing. Like our networking layer, unit test that shit. Mm-hmm. Our persistence layer, unit test the core functions of persistence, right? Not necessarily that like, did this class persist itself correctly every time, but like the persistence layer itself that is actually responsible for sending stuff over to core data, getting stuff back. And it's same with the networking layer. Well, no, not with it. I think the networking layer needed to have a comprehensive test suite because I want to know that when I'm making a call, I'm getting the same thing back.
Well, the layer that uses the persistence layer needs to be tested because the persistence layer itself is not super testable because core data is like almost impossible to unit test.
Yeah,
because it does all that weird crap behind the scenes, and it knows when you're trying to fiddle around with and use it in a fake way, and it'll just crap the bed. But no, I'm with you, and like I don't think the UI layer needs unit tests.
But we did that with we did unit tests on our presenters, which is essentially testing UI business logic, UI logic.
Sure, and presentation logic. I mean, that's I think logic is testable. If it's logic, it's you can write unit tests that verify it works the way it's supposed to work.
I don't disagree that you can do that. I don't think that you're getting a lot out of that because all of those business logic tests are going to go through some level of manual QA because they are on the UI.
Yeah.
SQLite Fuel? What the hell is that?
I think it meant file. Private methods.
I thought that was some like SQLite testing framework that I'd never heard of.
No, I don't think. I think it's just a typo.
And it's even spelled like in some weird like tech because it's not spelled correctly, so it looks like it's like it's a an open source project. What?
Leet speak?
Yeah.
There's there's a 3 instead of an E or something. No, it's like the ASCII equivalent of sagging your pants or whatever.
Or like isn't quick and nimble? They're misspelled, right? Or quick is it?
No. Those are both spelled like the actual words. And it's funny because they're all wordplay on Swift.
Yeah.
Quick, nimble. Our buddy Brian wrote spry.
Right.
But I don't know. Here's the thing, like, once again, there's that feedback loop that happens when you are writing tests. It affects the way you write code for the better.
Yeah.
And one of those ways is one of the things that makes you constantly question is this public or private? Should it be public? Should it be private? Should it be internal? Should it be whatever? Should it be file private? There's all those layers in Swift. But because if you're like, oh, I don't think this method should be tested, then should it be exposed? Maybe it should be a private method if you don't think it should be tested. If you think that testing this method is too much looking into the internals, then maybe it should only be internal.
Yeah.
That's just I don't know. I think he goes. What did he say here? I think the politics and logistics of getting valuable unit tests are a real barrier. A lot of places probably can't justify the cost of good tests. And that's a fair argument.
I I appreciate PhD Mash Ultra in the chat right now. He's on. I think he gets where I'm coming from.
So to give a little background on him, he has worked a very broad number of places. You know, he's worked in aerospace. He's worked for the government. He's worked in retail tech. He's worked in fintech, and he's currently at a large software company with a campus in Seattle. And yeah, so he has seen this at various levels of scale, and so has actually both of them.
And different corporate cultures.
Yes, definitely.
Because really, I think that's what we're kind of getting down to is like, does the environment that the devs are working in support doing this in a way that actually will provide benefit?
Hey Cody, can you clarify what you mean by that last statement? You said if you already wrote the test, as in TDD BDD, you never asked that question. Which question?
The question about management freaking out, is that
what he means by that? I'm trying to look back at the chat and see if I can get context on that.
Or asking the question about justifying cost of getting unit tests in.
Yeah, if I guess that would make sense.
But that's not fair. That's like saying, oh, we already have good unit tests, so we don't need to justify getting good unit tests.
He gave context. It's the question of should it be public or private. He says, if you already wrote the test, then you never asked that question.
Yeah.
Or it's already been asked by the time the test is written. You know. And I don't know. I don't know. Like TDD for me is like it serves two big functions. One, it affects the way I write code, and I can't tell you how many times the act of I'm writing tests, so that I check in tests with my code, and that's my only incentive is I want to make sure that I have code coverage for my own. Just because I look at myself as a craftsman, as a software developer, and so I care about the technical value of what I'm doing, and so I'm writing a test to make sure that I got coverage, and then in the act of writing a test, I go, oh, that's wrong, and it wasn't immediately obvious, and it wouldn't show up until some manual QA. We pushed it up through the CI/CD pipeline. All the unit tests have been run, and someone got a build, and they started playing around with it, and then they found that, and then I had to go back, and so now we're 45 minutes to an hour later. And
honestly, what this is making me feel more and more is that I want to work with you as a developer.
Yeah.
And do this with you because I haven't lived in this environment. I want to live in this world and play it.
I think that's a benefit.
It's a hole in my career.
What's that?
It's like a gap in my career.
Yeah. I think that maybe that's fair because because it sounds like you've just had some really crummy luck in terms of your exposure to unit testing. Because
I've worked at large companies mainly.
Yeah.
And large companies, they don't give a shit about this stuff.
Yeah, and that you're right.
And also large companies have code bases that have so many devs working on it that you can't it's very hard to enforce this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, see, Cody just said something. Cody, I'm gonna take issue with you a little bit. I'm gonna disagree with you, but he goes, TDD BDD is not typically write the test afterwards. It's typically write the tests first. If you've already written the code without tests, no amount of adding tests will make it TDD. And I disagree because I take the Uncle Bob approach, whereas it's not literally about the linear order of events. It's about working in tight iterating loops. And so if I'm making small incremental changes, I don't think it matters which order I write in, the test or the code, as long as they're happening. I'm going back and ping-ponging back and forth between them in tight iterating loops. I don't think it really matters the order. But I think that's an implementation detail of how you do TDD.
I mean, if you want to ruffle my feathers real bad, tell me I can't write code until I've written a test, and I'll give you the double middles and do donuts in the parking lot as I get the fuck out.
I love the term double middles. That's
I'm so out on that. No way.
Yeah, man. No, I think, yeah. I don't. I think we've come to some good shared understanding here, and I think, and I'll definitely concede. Like your descriptions of what your experiences have been. I'm like, I agree with you that is terrible.
Yeah,
That
and
them
I
being
would
done
love
that
to
way
get it. I
is
mean, I don't want. I would love to have like an offline discussion with you about some of the things I've seen. I mean, you don't think that these white hairs came here just because I'm getting old? No. Every one of these is a line of code that I saw that like shocked me into like, yeah, dude, it's tough. But
you're like the bully from It whose hair went all white. You know.
yeah, exactly.
No.
Uh,
Cody says it's very liberating if you haven't done it, and and I have done it that way. Like
I
we
would
did it
like
that way a lot when we worked together. Was you'd say here's what I'm gonna do. In fact, this, even in the interview process when I worked there was like we're gonna write a test, and you just have to say it needs to return five. It's gonna take in two things, and it's gonna determine if they add it up to the right thing. And so the first test is we're gonna feed it 2 plus 2, and it's gonna equal 4. Make it pass the test. And I'm like, return 4. And so and then he updates the tests. I mean, he updates the requirements. He's like, okay, now I'm gonna make verify that if you add this and this, it's gonna change. And then I modify it. And then as he adds requirements, we tack on more and more functionality. And that way you never. That's to me that's real beauty. If you do true literal linear, like in terms of like literalty test driven development. Man, you never write a single line of code more than you need to, ever. What's that? You're seeing something happen in the chat
the
here?
last PhD.
I've seen beams glitter off the shoulder of Ryan. I've seen, what is it, something, ships on fire, or whatever, I don't know.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, man. What a line.
And it's amazing that monologue was completely improvised.
Lost, like tears in the rain.
He improvised that whole monologue.
That's brilliant, man. What a guy. Jeez.
Oh, I mean, have you ever seen the old
there it is,
black and white there it is, yes, like tears in rain. Did you ever see the old Orson Welles flick? Well, he's in it, but I don't think he directed it. The Third Man. It's an old film noir movie.
I think I've heard of
Orson Welles. It is one pinnacle scene. They're on the top of a Ferris wheel. He delivers this incredible monologue, and it's completely improvised.
Wow.
It like completely is the climax of the film, and like it ties together the whole rest of the film, and he just made it up on the spot.
It was Orson Welles himself?
Yeah, he was himself playing the character. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, dude, you got to watch that movie. Like everything from the production.
Yeah. I actually
the music. The music is so good. It's like zither music, and it's incredible. Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude, great movie. Anyway, I think we're.
I just saw the latest Blade Runner, the newest Blade Runner movie.
2049.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was decent. It was decent.
It was all right.
Yeah, I mean, for picking up someone else's work, Denis Villeneuve did a pretty good job, and makes me a little bit hopeful that he can do something good with Dune.
That'd be cool. The it had a lot of the feel of the original of the first movie. Because the first movie wasn't that good of a movie if you take it just as a movie, but just as a movie. But like the beauty, the cinematography, the music, the like look and feel, the set design, those are the things that made it so good. But like the characters and the plot line,
it was a Philip K. Dick story, and his characters are usually pretty two-dimensional.
And so I could say the same thing about 2049. It kind of had that same problem for me. Is like the characters were like meh, the plot line was like meh, but the scenes, the set design, the music, the atmosphere, the costumes, like it was all just like, oh, so beautiful. It was, it's a feast for the eyes and ears, really, is what those movies are.
It feels like a lived-in world that has, like that makes sense. Anyway, well, I think we've run out of TDD fodder.
We definitely have, but this was a good chat, man. And also, I just want to say, I don't know Codeman and PhD Mash Ultra, but man, you guys are cool guys. If you ever want to grab a drink and or hang out or get some coffee or whatever.
Well, they work
Jake,
not far from where you live, so
maybe you should do an introduction before you leave.
yeah. I mean, like here in on the stream.
No, like in real life.
Oh,
like
before oh yes, yeah. For those who don't know this, I'm moving. That's why this this room is so sparse, and there's an extra computer and a box and stuff. Instead of a drum
is this
set,
your office?
Is
this your normal office?
Yeah, it's my office. My drum set used to be.
Yeah, right it is. It's been deconstructed, man. It's very sad.
My sound paneling, which I still have some of it over here. And then I have my bass guitar up there, and I have on behind my monitor. Oh, I got these. I don't know. Right anyway,
okay, it does still kind of look like your office, but it's very different.
Yeah, I packed up as much of it as I can, and still be able to use it as an office because I work from home.
I'm sad, man. Don't leave. Don't leave. Don't leave me.
It's bittersweet, man. It's
you're like the only friend I have in Seattle, and you just leave.
I mean, I've lived here my whole life, man. It wasn't an easy decision to make, you know.
Oh, I know that feel all too well.
Yeah, but that lower cost of living and the winters where you still get to see the sun, and you know, none of that Mad Max stuff that's going in Seattle happening. You know, those are all nice big draws.
The Seattle Mad Max stuff is really weird.
Super weird, and probably not. This probably isn't the venue for discussing it, but
no, but like, it's kind of crazy. But I love the trees, the geography, the water. I'm so happy that I have that because like none of that in Dallas, dude. Dallas doesn't have geography.
None of that where I'm moving to either.
It's just flat.
Yeah. But you know, so anyway, I'd love to. I would love to. Introduce you to these guys. You know, have a meetup. If
they're interested, I'd love to say hello.
However, you can do a meetup in you know during the time of plague.
We could just we could grab a cup of coffee and go to a park and sit 7 feet away from each other and like in a weird drum, in a weird drum circle. That's what people do now. They're at all the parks around where I live at. They go sit away from each other, or far away from each other.
Yeah, actually,
I went to this weird time.
I went to the zoo today, actually, and it was kind of. I felt like I was getting CO2 poisoning from wearing that mask all day long at the zoo. Mm-hmm. Like we had to like keep finding a spot like, you know, in a like a little like inlet off the path so I could just take my mask off for a second and like not feel like I was dying.
Yeah, I don't mind it so much, but like when you're walking around doing stuff or like wearing it for a long time, it's hot. My hot breath.
And it's like doing the like, you know, when someone's hyperventilating and they have to breathe into a paper bag. That's what it feels like. I don't get
that so much. I don't get that so much, but I get that like my whole body core temperature increases like 5 degrees when I'm just breathing the hot breath all over my face like this. I just get hot.
Yeah, same.
It's weird. Like I'm sweating and it's cold outside just because I'm wearing a mask.
My kids are like crying. They're like, "Dad, can we take the masks off?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to go to jail."
Mask jail, face covering jail.
It's a thing, man. No, but hey, I have to catch one last thing that David said here. He goes, "How would we find the replicants without any void conf unit tests?"
Oh, he didn't say unit tests.
But I stuck that in there.
I didn't get that joke. Okay,
now you get it. See, that's why.
Man, now I really want to meet this guy. That's a good man. That's solid. That's solid double entendre.
He is a walking allusion machine.
Yeah.
Kind of like how you and I would communicate almost exclusively in Simpsons quotes when we work together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this guy is capable of just talking in movie quotes like all day long, and like you wouldn't even necessarily know he was doing it. You know, he'd be quoting Conan the Barbarian or something, and you wouldn't even realize it.
I just watched both of the Conan movies a little bit ago, and I'm playing Conan Exiles. That was in preparation for playing that game.
Oh, it's like. Is that game still around? Like that was like one of those like worlds like those games like, you know, Rust or all those different things where
Trex is streaming it. Trex has a private Conan server, and we're playing on so that like we can play in there. Because if you don't have a private server, any rando can come and just
who's a professional Twitch streamer, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so he got a server for his community so that they can play it, because Conan is like a big game in his community.
Oh man,
it's a great. And so I boot camped my iMac just so I could play that game.
oh man, that
I was
it
playing it before we got.
it probably fries your graphics card.
It's not a super high fidelity game, I don't think, in terms of graphics.
Sure, but you can have a super low fidelity game, but if you're using like 16x anti-aliasing, it's still gonna chug.
Dude, this thing is quick. What are you talking about? My iMac?
Most Macs fast. Though, their graphics, if they have beefy graphics, they're for like rendering, not for real time rendering.
Right. Yeah.
So
it spins the fan. But it doesn't seem to be like freaking out too bad. So it's a fun game though.
Nice, man. I'll have to check it out. Yeah. You know, like I only have so much time to play video games, and I don't have time for games that are gonna make me feel frustrated or stressed out. So I pretty much play turn-based tactical games now. That's pretty much all I play.
It's a super chill game though, because like it's a harvesting game. Yeah. It's like you go in and you just like harvest minerals.
Yeah.
So you just
go base building and like fighting other tribes and stuff like that, right?
Yeah. But there also is like a WoW progression. There's like world bosses and stuff like that too.
Oh, that's cool. Like
you can do that if you want to.
Like monsters?
There's like abandoned cities where demons live and shit like that. Like there is like cool. A world boss. There is like a boss of the game, I think, like Ragnar.
Can you fight Crom?
you can't fight Crom. But when you create your character, you choose a religion, and all the religions do something for you. But the Crom religion, if you associate with the Crom religion, it says Crom bestows no benefits upon his users and answers no prayers. Or something like Crom answers no prayers and bestows no benefits upon his worshippers, or something like that. It's hilarious.
Well, is that the game too, where you can make your character be completely naked?
Yeah, you can. And every time you die, you lose all your clothes. So every time you die, you run back to your body just buck ass naked. It's a server setting. You can turn on full nudity or not.
Yeah.
But he has full nudity turned on because it's hilarious.
There's a lot of jiggle physics that they have to turn on for that. It's no good, It's way too. It makes my processor work too hard.
Yeah. Well, when you make your character, if you do a dude, there's a dick slider, so you can go like this, and your dick just gets longer and shorter. It's hilarious. Or if you're a woman, there's a boob slider, so you can do the same thing with your boobs and make these giant boobs. It's hilarious.
This game was definitely not designed for adolescent boys at all.
Oh, it is there, and it's so glitchy too, and the glitches are like so endearing to the game. They're like, is it like hilarious.
An indie game? Like, is it like a small studio or something?
I think it's a small studio. It's not super indie, but it's not a big studio, that's for sure. But I was gonna say the really wild thing is, I've heard rumors. Trex keeps telling me that apparently they're working on a Dune version of the game.
Oh man, there was a Dune RTS back in the day.
Yeah, there was. I remember that back in the Command.
Oh, this is my wife. What's up?
Hey, wife. Hello.
I don't know. I just wanted to.
Oh, say hi to all 4 people who are watching.
I was watching on Facebook, but I don't think you got any of my comments.
Oh no, I didn't.
Oh, we're only looking at the Twitch comments.
No, yeah, that's oh man.
Streamer not doing his job.
I realized you weren't looking, you didn't see them, so I stopped making them, and now I can't remember. Anyway, the most important was, this is so relevant to my tastes. You weren't talking about anything in particular. So. Anyway.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I'll sign off, and I'm gonna go grab an orange crush soda.
Yeah. Somebody.
From Walgreens, I think.
I salute you, sir. No, someone's gonna come look at my house in the morning, so we have to get up early and then like scramble out of the house with my wife and kids. So, all right. So
sounds
I got a shower
exciting.
today. So anyway.
Well, thank you, PhD Mesh Ultra and Codeman9 for being in the chat and providing some very thought-provoking questions. And whoever's out there in Facebook and YouTube land, thanks to you guys too for joining in. Jake, it's been fun.
Thanks for all the comments, everybody. Actually, I want to see.
Holy! What did you just do? That was amazing.
Oh, whoa! There's I should have been looking at this the whole time. There's like a comment aggregator.
Are you seeing what that's doing to Twitch chat
Oh yeah,
right now?
it's crazy.
To your stream? That's amazing.
Anyway, sorry about that. Yeah. So anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for having this conversation with me. I had a lot of fun with this, Watson.
We'll keep it going. I'll let you know how it goes.
All right.